So today we'll go over some of the keyers, the different keying tools that you have to use in Nuke when you're keying green screens. First, in terms of keying, I think it's important to know that when you're considering which keying tools to use and how you're going to break your key up, it's important to think of your keying in terms of, first you want to pull an edge mat. So you want to use a keyer that's going to give you great edges, and that's all you want to focus on. You're not worried about the core or filling in the whole key. All you're worried about is retaining the edges of your plate. And usually I prefer to use the IBK color keyer when I'm attempting to key for my edges. So there are actually a few different ways that you can use the IBK. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'll show you guys some of those techniques. So there's this method known as the stacking method, which is very popular. My go-to method is simply to create a constant, and then there's just the method of using one single IBK color. The idea with the IBK color is basically that you want to create a clean green plate. So by default, it's set to blue. So we'll go ahead and change that to green. So we basically want to create sort of a clean plate of the green screen with this IBK color to feed that into the IBK Gizmo node to create a mat. So when you're using just a single IBK color node, what your goal is you want to get rid of, let's zoom in a little bit. You want to get rid of all of these pixels that are not this pure green color that we have. So we have some of the edges of the character here, and we want to remove that first so that we can then create our clean green screen plate. So it'll be completely green. So I'll go ahead and just bring this down to 5. We can even just play around with these numbers. You can, there's no specific number that you need to use for these settings. You just play around with them because you want to use the settings, like I said, that are going to remove all of these colors that are not green. So I could bring this down to, let's just leave it at 2 for now. And then what we'll want to go and do is we want to adjust our lights and darks. I'm going to start with the lights so we can pull even more of this color out. So I'll just start with maybe 0.55. Okay, and we see even that value of 0.55. Now we're kind of losing those edges, which is what we want. And once we have those dialed in, and if you get something where it's close and you might still have a little tiny edge around of color that's not this pure green, if you can see there's probably a little black here, then what you could do is you could start eroding. So this erode will help you to pull out even more. If you see this, I don't know if you guys can see this, there's a little, kind of a little black shadow still from the guy. So I'll just use the erode a little bit to remove that. So now it looks like I did a good job of cutting out basically the foreground character. And now what we need to do is, since this, we want the whole screen to be green, we'll go ahead and patch that. And this patch goes up to 5, but you can type in any number that you need to get that patched green. And now we have this nice, clean green screen, clean plate. And then what we would do is we would feed that into the IBK Gizmo node. And let's take a look at our final output for now. So this is what we have so far. So our IBK Gizmo is set to green. We, by default, it might be set to blue. So you just need to make sure you pick what color you want. And you can go ahead and start adjusting some of these settings too. You can turn on the luminance match to see if it's helping or if it's not. You can see, let's look at these edges when I turn on that luminance match. And remember, this IBK, you see we're getting this dark edge here, so we probably don't want that. This IBK is for the edges. So when we're dialing these adjustments in, we want to pay attention to all of the edges, the edge of the hair, the edge of the character, and that's all we want to worry about with this keyer. There's some other settings here. Once you have your background, you can plug it in and use some of the background luminance that might help sometimes. But since we're using a checkerboard, we don't need to worry about that for now. So that's one way to use the IBK color. Let's go over a second way for, we have the IBK, we need the clean plate, the green clean plate. So there's this stacking method. So let's go over how that works. So this stacking method, it's used instead of dialing in your darks and lights. With this method, all you have to adjust is your erode and your patch. And it uses sort of a math, type of setup where it's basically you start with your first one. I have it stacked up here, but I'll just go through the first few to show you how this is working. So for our first one, we would not change anything. We could bring this down to 1. Let's change the color to green. And then you just change this to 50. And you start with the value of 2. So the first one is 2 for your patch black. And then you just use a series of these. So I'll just copy this same one and then I'll paste it. And then you just multiply by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. And you just keep building it up until you get something that you like here. So 4 times 2 is 8. So this is the process for this. It's called the IBK stack method. 8 times 2 is 16. So we're just going further and further building this up. And I have it stacked up here. So you can see I have 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And I went all the way up to 128. You could even keep going further if you need to. Just keep multiplying the patch black value by 2. And now we have another clean green plate. So let's compare the two. So we have, from using a single IBK color, we have this is our result. And then with the stacking method, this is our result. And just to see how the differences are looking here, and actually we'll just look at our alpha. So let's look at our alpha with these two methods. I'm going to use a switch note so we can just switch between the two. So we can just compare these two methods. And when you're keying, it's just good to have a good bunch of tricks that you can try. So one method might work perfectly fine for some footage, while it might not work at all for another. So that's why it's good to have different ways of using these keying tools. So let's check out our mats. So these are the differences, and they aren't too different. It looks like overall the edges are probably staying the same. Let's look at our final output, and then let's switch between the two so we can look at those edges again. And we're not really seeing a big difference when we're looking at our final output. So both of these methods are just fine. Now, my preferred method, which is just using a simple constant node to pull my color, I just go ahead, I create my constant, and then I just sample the color from the plate. And there I have my green. And you can plug that into the color for the IBK Gizmo. And then, well, I did set it up here, so I'll just leave it to this, set to this switch so we can switch between the two we'll compare the stack method now with my constant method. So let's look at our alpha. And then let's switch between the constant. I'll turn this grade off. Let's switch between the constant and the stack. So there we have it. So we see the difference. With constant, we're picking up a lot more from the plate, which is actually fine because we can just garbage mat out the areas that we need. So we don't have to worry about all the stuff that's happening away from what we need. What we would do is we would simply just mask everything out that we need with the roto. So that's how we would take care of that. We don't necessarily need to do that right now for the purpose of this demo. So the reason that I have this grade node here, so let's switch back to my constant method, is sometimes I like to use this grade node to dial in my color even more to help with my alpha here. So that's what I was doing with that. And now when we compare the two, we still see they're pretty similar. Now you could go even further and use a grade node to adjust this alpha even further. But since this mat is for our edges, we want to pay attention to our edges with all the adjustments that we're making. So whenever we're making some adjustments, we want to pay attention to what's happening with our edges. So we can see when I started adjusting that grade after I added a grade and I changed the channels to alpha, we can see how my edges are changing when I'm adjusting that grade. So I would want to be sure to pay attention to my edges when I'm dialing this in, because for this edge mat, I want to focus on getting good edges. So you will just pay attention with every adjustment that we're making. So that's the IBK color. So if we had something that we liked, so for now, I'll just keep this connected to, let's keep it connected to the stack and then we'll see. So right now I'll use this stack as my edge mat. And then, so I would just, let's just be neat and name this edge mat. And then what we also would need to do is go ahead and create our core key. So for that, let's look at our alpha. So as we can see, this alpha for our edges, it's not really gonna hold up too well. We're losing a lot of stuff when we start bringing that gamma down. And even if we had the gamma, we still have some transparency here. So now we need to create a core mat to fill in all of these whole areas here and all the transparent parts of our mat. For your core mat, you could either use the Keylight or the Primatte. So let's go through the process of using this Primatte. For now, I'm going to connect this. So let's go ahead and make a new Primatte. We'll connect our foreground. And with the Primatte, there is one option to simply compute your mat. So let's try that out. And now we see we didn't have to sample any colors, and the Primatte already gave us a good starting point. Normally for the Primatte though, what we would do is we would go ahead and select our color. So let's go back to the plate, and now let's start selecting our color. So first we have the color picker on and we want to select our background color. So you hold down Control, and actually you don't have, you can select your green color from the background. So we have our background color. Now let's look at the Primatte as our output. Then we'll switch over to the alpha channel. because what we can then do once we have our background color selected, we can start going in here and cleaning up our background noise. So we can keep cleaning this up. You can hold down Control and Shift if you want to take larger samples of this away at a time. So we can go through it like that. And then you could just switch back to selecting, holding down Control to select some more of these colors that we don't need. And this is going to be our core matte. So we're not worried about the edges, and we're not worried about taking away too much of the edge pixels. When you're keying though, I do want to note that you should go ahead and play your matte so you can see how everything's working. You want to make sure, you know, the matte is solid in all areas. You want to, you know, make sure it's working the way that you want. Now for the core matte, you don't want the matte to extend all the way to the edges. And if you had any, like we have these holes here, you would keep going with the Primatte and you would clean the foreground noise. So let's see if I start cleaning this out. And then if I'm playing my matte, I see there's some, I saw some more transparent frames. Let's see where they are. Here they are. So let's go ahead and clean those up too. So that's why it's good to play your matte through, especially while you're selecting your values, because you can go ahead and select more stuff as you're playing your footage. Like let's see, now I played it a little further and I have this noise up here that I want to get rid of. So you just go through and clean it up, but make sure you're watching every frame so you can make sure. If you bring your gamma down up here, you can start seeing the integrity of your matte. If you start bringing this down, and the matte will disappear if it's not solid, or it'll have holes in it. So then you can see those holes that you wouldn't see where your gamma's at 1. Let's look at this other one. This one might have some holes in it. So let's start bringing this down. And now we can see those foreground holes that we cleaned up in the last selection that we did. And we also see the table starts going away. So this auto-computed Primatte is really falling apart for us. And again, it's not that noticeable when you have the gamma at the normal 1, but that's why these viewer tools are very useful, so you can see stuff like this that you wouldn't normally see. And now we know that our matte needs a little more work. We need to fill this in. We need to bring back all of this stuff that got lost. So when we picked our colors, that matte held up a little bit better. And now that we have this, since this is our, I'm going to go ahead and attach this. Let's just merge this channel in. So we have our edge matte connected over here with our IBK color. Now let's bring in this core matte that we have. And now we see this is what we have. Now if we turn off our channel merge, which will take out our core matte, we'll see that that core matte is actually extending through our edges. And we don't want our core matte to affect our edges. That's why we have an edge matte. So what we need to do here is we need to erode our core matte a little bit so that it's not picking up these pixels. So let's go ahead and just create an erode node there. And let's just start bringing this down. So as we can see, we start taking those pixels away from the edge. And that's what we want. We definitely don't want our core matte affecting our edges. So we'll just bring that down. And then we'll add a blur so that it blends a little bit better. And let's take a look at our alpha channel so we can see exactly what we're doing here. So if I turn these off, we'll see that hard edge that's coming in. You know, we want a nice soft edge for our alpha matte. So now we're starting to keep our edge matte that we made, and then the core mat is filling in those holes for us. So we can dial this in as much as we want, making sure it's serving its purpose of keeping the core of our mat solid. So this is what we have. I'm going to turn on this grade for now though, just to, let's turn this off. Okay, and then let's adjust this grade a little bit so I can clean up my alpha a little bit more. Okay, and let's gamma down so we can see. Now we have a good mat. You can see though, when you bring down the gamma, this is the difference between our edge mat and our core mat. So we might want to fill in different. It's working great for our actor, but for this box, this is when we might want to create a different core mat for that area. Let me check this one out. Let's check out this one. So what we can do is we can key mix this in for the area that we want it to, or should we channel merge it? Let's channel merge this one in and see what we get first before we attempt to key mix. The key mix will only take, the key mix will, I'll show you guys what the key mix will do, but basically the key mix will, it will only take, instead of merging the channels, it will only add in, it will actually replace whatever you mask out. So I'll just show you an example right now actually. So if I key mix this in, this Primatte, and so you have to create a mat for the key mix, and then let's say I'm gonna key mix in this cereal box. So once we key mix that in, see, it's now just replacing that. So it's not merging it together, it's actually replacing, bringing in this, using this as the mat for what we want to replace. And you know, it's taking this part of the alpha, and then it's key mixing in this Primatte. So we can just use the channel merge since we're just trying to finish filling in this box. Now we do still want a mat for that, because we don't want to affect the person, because he's looking good and his edges are looking good. So now we're just going to use this Primatte, and we're going to go ahead and create another road so that we can bring back a little bit more of those edges that we see. And I still have my gamma down so that I can see exactly what's happening here, so that I can get something better that's going to work. And then let's blend it a little bit to blend it, blur it a little to blend those in. And now this one's looking better. So without that, we had that. So now we fill that in. And now, you know, we have a lot more of the gamma. So we can go ahead and adjust that too if we want to, just bring that gamma down. And I like to put a blur node or an edge blur after my rotos, just to make sure that I'm never having any sharp roto lines. That's a common issue. Someone will say, oh, I see your matte line. So I just always throw a blur or something after my roto so that I can make sure that I'm being mindful of not having those sharp roto edges. So let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, so we're getting something nice here. It looks like this table edge also needs a little bit more love. So let's go ahead, since we use this mat to keep filling in parts, we can see if it's going to fill in. Let's check out the alpha first and see. Oh, actually, oh, that might be my checkerboard looking funny in the back there. Let me turn it off and see. No, that's my table edge. Okay, so yeah, we definitely need to pay attention to this edge. Let's take a look at some of our mats to see where we're losing that edge. Okay, so we have here, then oh, it's happening here. So let's see. It's the same problem that we were having. Let's turn this off for a second. So then we might want to, just like we did for the cereal box, then we might want to also create another Primatte or something to fill in and blend this edge better. And then we could matte that out. So we're not going to use this matte for that though. Let's go over the other keyer tool, the Keylight, that you can also use to create your core mats. So you can just build your mat up. You know, you can piece it together using different masks. You can use different options. You can use the Primatte Auto. You can use the Primatte, you know, and pick your colors yourself. So you have a lot of tools for getting a good mat in. So let's go to the Keylight. I'm not sure if I adjusted this one yet, so I'll just create a new one for you guys. And then we will start bringing these values. So we have the Keylight, and you will need to go ahead and click your color picker box here. And then you select your color holding down the control key.